Okay, section 2, lesson 2, section 3, part 2, take 1. 5, 4.
Okay, now we're going to render this in grayscale. This is the drawing that you completed a little bit earlier, and I recommend that you limit yourself to 6 different gray markers. You can even use less if you want. And in chapter 10, I talk specifically about the different numbers of the markers corresponding with the different types of value. And the very first thing that we want to do is decide on a light source. Even though there's more than one light source in the room, in order for this to look realistic, we are going to choose one area for the light source, and then we're going to stick with it. So, for example, as we also talked about, everything has a light side, a dark side, and a medium side. So you can just draw a little cube in the corner of your drawing so that you can remind yourself. You can look back at this. And it should be pretty clear that we're going to use the top as our light. This is going to be medium, and this is going to be dark, which means it's also going to have the shadow. We'll do shadows in a little bit as well. I think we should start off by just putting some tone on the furniture, and since the top of everything is going to be light, I'm going to use my cool gray 2. I should mention that I am drawing directly on the Sharpie drawing, and the reason I'm doing that is because it tends to pick up some of the ink, the Copic markers, and they look really great. It gives it a very nice kind of painterly look to it. We can use a dark gray on everything that is what we would call a dark surface. This side. So the furniture is basically just like a cube anyway, so this should be pretty easy for you. And you can see that as I use the marker, it erases the Sharpie lines underneath. And now we have to go back into our medium side. And you don't have to be too careful with it. I definitely have some areas where, I didn't stay exactly in between the lines, but that's okay. It makes it look like it was drawn by a human and not a computer. I think what I'm going to do right now is move to the back of the paper. You probably noticed that I'm using tracing paper because I like it the best. And one of the reasons I like it the best is because I can work on the back. And the first thing that I'm going to do is the exterior, which is this window here. I'm going to take this as an opportunity to really kind of set a mood in the drawing. I want this to look like a cityscape because that tends to look very modern. And I'm making it look like these little lights are on because I'm going to put a dark sky. I want it to look like nighttime. It's one of my favorite little backgrounds to do. And it really sets a mood on the interior, what you put outside. It's very important. But you always want to do it on the back of the paper because it sets it back just a little bit in the picture plane. Also, we're going to do some reflections from our furniture. So, let's see. We talk about reflections in depth a little further on in the book, but we're going to start off by just doing some of these vertical reflections, and it's very, very easy to do. You just measure however high something is from that surface, it's going to go down just as far. So it's pretty simple. And everything's going to go back to the same vanishing point. I'm going to render this just a little bit lighter than the one I used on the front. Go around the rug. Reflections are really wonderful. They take your drawing to a whole new level. They just look so much more sophisticated. I'm also going to now use a marker. Going back to that same vanishing point, I can kind of draw just a little bit of the sofa in right there. and the chairs as well, but everything always continues to go to the same vanishing point. That's why these types of reflections are so easy to do. Go back to the front. Okay, and let's do a fire in the fireplace. I always think that if you're going to have a fireplace in your drawing, you should have a fire. So I'll show you how to do these in color a little later on in the book. But for black and white, you would put dark on the outside and then a medium gray in the middle and then a very light gray in the center. We can also make it look like there's kind of a nice glow coming from the fire by making this a little bit dark. And not too much detail. Okay, let's do something with this back wall. Let's see, it is our dark tone, so I'm going to give it a little bit of a tone. Even if this was a white wall, it would still have some value to it because it is our dark side. And hopefully you can see that by doing the little buildings on the back of the paper, it looks further away. We can kind of tell that it's not a painting on the wall. And speaking of painting on the wall, let's do a little something on this painting on the wall. Just a little scribble to represent some art on the wall. That's good enough. And I think I'm going to just put a little bit of tone so that that looks even more like glass. Okay, let's put a little something on the shelves. Maybe that'll look like some sort of a plant. And let's go ahead and put maybe a little bit of a lighter tone. Oh, look at that. See how it picks up the Sharpie? Which is really what I wanted to do because this marker is a little bit dry, so that is just perfect. I wanted this to look different from the back wall. Okay, let's go ahead and do maybe some of the shadows. No, let's do the floors. Let's do the floor first. I'm going to use a C2 on the floor. And it is going to erase the lines, but I'm going to go back in and put some of them in. And hopefully that reflection, you still want to be able to see the reflection. Most importantly, I'm also going to use the C2 on this wall. And I think I'll do it on this wall too. I love how it's picking up just a little bit of the Sharpie marker. And don't be afraid to let it look imperfect. I personally like that about marker drawings. I like that this isn't a solid gradient like it was done in Photoshop or something like that. Now this part of the beam is on our dark side, according to this. So we have to give it some tone. And now let's go ahead and do something for the rug. Make it look like it had some kind of pattern. Let's do some glass table. Let's make it a really dark glass. The magic number for reflections is 3. So I'm going to leave 3 stripes to represent a reflection. And those stripes are going to be different widths from each other. And they're also going to be different distances from each other. That way they don't end up looking like stripes. And they still go vertical, up and down. Okay, now we need to just add some shadows. Let's take the black. Don't be afraid of black. Many students are. Shadow there. Shadow there. Now for this one, I'm just gonna fake in a little something. I'm not gonna figure out exactly how to draw it, but I'm just gonna do a little something like that, which actually, when you do something that you don't like, you can use your blender to go in and lift it out. But you always have to clean off your blender when you use it. That's a little bit better. And let's add a nice shadow to the art. Little cast shadow there. Where it's hanging on the wall, I'm going to do just a tiny shadow right there from the shelf onto the wall. Just a little bit. From the fireplace onto the wall. I'm even going to do a little one on the glass. And I don't have to worry about messing up what I did because it was on the back. I think it's just about done. What I'd like to do now is just maybe freshen up a couple of lines. I really like to do vertical lines in the reflective floor. They just, I don't know what it is about them. They look so great. And I think the next thing that I'm going to do is just frame my view. We'll talk more about composition as we go along in the book, but it's very important. And so I'm going to choose exactly what I want to show. And make sure that I get that little sketch out. A little cube. Okay. And let your lines overlap. Looks architectural when your corners overlap. Okay, great. I think I'm done.